Okay, colleagues, so we will start with the participants. 1 second, and there we go. Vamos, José. Dear colleagues, welcome back. On behalf of the World Organization of United Cities and Local Governments, UN Habitat and Metropolis, and on this occasion, on the Forum of Cities and Territories of Peace, we would like to welcome you to this session dedicated to peace. Before yielding the floor to our Secretary General, Emilia Saiz, please allow me to go through some technical details and housekeeping. Colleagues, as you know, we have interpretation in 3 languages, English, Spanish, and French. We would like to ask all the participants to mute when not speaking, and when speaking, to turn on your video, speak clearly and towards and near the microphone, and we suggest that you select up here to see only the active speaker, so that you will be able to see the slides. As always, we will have a live consultation. So we invite you to go in your mobile phones to menti.com and use the code 414441. We will give you again the number when we go to the consultation, but it is good that you go to the menti.com now. Welcome back, colleagues, and I now yield the floor to our Secretary General, Emilia Saiz. Emilia, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Pablo. Thank you, team. Welcome back. We've had a little break of the live learning experiences that started in March with the peak of the outbreak here in Europe, and that we have been gathering twice a week for quite a few months. We've had many interesting experiences. We had our executive bureau last week, and that is why we had to pause a little bit. But welcome back to this renewed series. 75 years ago, the world looked worse than now. It was a worse place to live, actually. The world was coming out of a war, and it was also one situation with a universal impact that led humanity to create the United Nations. And only yesterday, the President of the General Assembly of the United Nations has announced that for the first time in its history, the heads of the states are not going to be coming together at the General Assembly in September. And when I heard that, and I was preparing for this session, I thought, wow, that's bad news. And that's what made me think, okay, if I compare the world now and then, what's the difference? Many people would say we are in a war situation right now. I think that is wrong. We are in a crisis situation, in a very dramatic situation, which is unprecedented. But war brings a level of destruction that we are not seeing now. and that I think we need to build on, and we need to build hope on, just like that generation back in 1945 did, and come up with good things for the world. And that's also why I think it is so important to hold a session about peace and building peace now and for the post-pandemic. What does it entail? What is peace for us? And as we said in the fora that we held in Madrid before, peace for us is not something that is contrary to war, and it's not contrary to conflict, it's contrary to violence. And understanding the causes of violence in this urban era is very important for our constituency. I also feel that in this urban era, the role that local and regional governments need to play in building the foundations of peace is far greater than what we are acknowledging. And that our trust, the trust that we build with the communities all over the world, are the type of foundations that we necessitate to trigger the kind of change that we are all hoping for. Believe me, in this series of live learning experiences, I have heard very resolute local and regional government leaders that are already thinking about the future while dealing with the crisis now. And their thoughts on how we need to do things next are very impressive. Now we need to make sure that we avoid the conflicts that we will need to face to turn into violent situations. And we will need to make sure that all of us stop accepting the inequalities that we live with, because those inequalities are eventually going to trigger a lot of difficult conflict. And conflict is good as long as we know how to solve it. My vision of this topic for us is very relevant. Although few see us as actors in peacemaking, local and regional governments have only seen themselves like that, and the transformative diplomacy that we pull together as networks of local and regional governments are a proof of that. So I really hope that we can advance in this agenda. I'm not going to go into the contents of the forum because I really hope that our partners from Mexico that are going to host the next edition of the forum will expand on that. But in any case, I want to transmit the message of my presidency. We do feel we have a role and a responsibility towards peacekeeping. And being a meaningful actor in that action. So I hope that today we can share some of the experiences that we are going through at the moment, and that we also envision some of the recommendations that we would like to work towards in the future. I leave it there, colleagues, and I will immediately give the floor to Octavio de la Varga, who is the Secretary General of Metropolis, our metropolitan section, and also a co-organizer of this series, for whom life has also changed a lot since the lockdown through the pandemic. Octavio, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Emilia, and good afternoon to everybody. Yeah, it's been quite a change. 3 months working from home, so still some weeks to go, but we're managing. I think we're managing quite well, and as I said, I'm very proud of the team in Metropolis, that because everybody is working as usual in terms of the contents and of the activities, not in the conditions. As you said, Emilia, conflict is at the very heart of human beings' existence. I mean, we shouldn't be avoiding conflict. The problem is when violence stands up, and it has many different phases, physical, psychological, and sometimes the phases of violence are not visible. Sometimes they're visible, and sometimes they're not visible, and we don't know that violence is taking place in our cities, in our communities. Living together, I have to accept, living together brings conflict and problems. School, the workplace, in the public space, in public market, everywhere. I mean, when you bring humans together, there's conflict. And it's very interesting because if we look throughout the history and the development and expansion of cities, there has been a process to resolve conflict to a certain extent, to resolve conflict in a non-violent way. And that we need to keep in mind, that because these days we see what's going on around the world, this anger that's happening in many, many cities because of the racism and other situations. But at the same time, in cities is where the place where many, many times throughout the history, we have found solution to the problems of living together. And I think one of the issues that we're facing in this moment right now is that we are in a moment of the history that we live in the more diverse and heterogeneous societies. And that can be an asset, but as well at the same time, it can be a source of conflict when different interests arise and we are not able to agree on common interests. And violence at local level, I think it's linked to inequalities, to discrimination, to lack of inclusion, to racism, to misogyny, or to xenophobia, to say some examples. And when violence stands up, it comes fear, it comes anger, it comes segregation, and then therefore there is less freedom and less opportunities for citizens. And this is a vicious circle. And I think without peace, there cannot be security, there cannot be trust, there cannot be solidarity. There is a need of awareness, and there's also this, without peace, there's no sense of belonging to a community, to a city, to a town. And I think this security, trust, solidarity, awareness, sense of belonging are at the basis of a fair local community. And at the end of the day, those are the basis of the right to the city. And I think this is what we need together to build together as a community of local leaders and practitioners. And I think that the pandemic, because the pandemic has shown us, I think, has confronted us to this reality, to some of the realities that we knew they were there, but we didn't know they were so strong. And this is something that we need to accept. And we have discovered as well other sources of violence that we were not aware of. And what's happening to all people, the issue of the lockdown for women, the impact of the lockdown for women, for children, and so on. And this is our vision in Metropolis, that territory of peace means that we need to rethink public space, we need to rethink public officers, the way public officers relate to citizens. I'm not talking only about policemen and policewomen, which is now on the news every day. I'm talking about the way all civil servants relate to citizens when they are delivering services or they are in contact with citizens. And the third one is gender mainstreaming. We think that's critical to ensure territory of peace. And just to say that at the end of the day, if we want to build a culture of peace, there is also, we need responsibility from our leadership. We need responsibility from local leaders, and as well, we need to ensure the legitimacy of institutions. Because if citizens start questioning the legitimacy of institutions, then again, we go in this vicious circle that I was highlighting before. So I think today is a great opportunity to discuss these things, to discuss, I think, with all the panelists, how we can build really real peace, territories of peace, how we can work together and build vibrant communities that no one is left, where no one is left behind. And just to say as well that we'll be working on the coming days, on the coming months, on an issue paper from Metropolis side on violence in big cities, and which are the answers that local governments can provide, big cities can provide in order to eradicate violence in our territories. So I'm sure that today we'll have very fruitful discussions.
Thank you very much, Octavi. Indeed, I think this issue paper that you're going to be working on is extremely important, because one of the things that, from my perspective, we should be doing as local governments is help understand the approach to conflict and the origin of conflict in this urban era. I mean, if you look at the situation right now with the pandemic, even in places where we had forgotten about borders a little bit, and I'm talking, for instance, about the Eurozone and the second zone in Europe, the immediate reaction of national government has been to close the borders as well. And so their way of solving these potential conflicts and addressing issues of this type remain very linked to sovereignty issues that have been the source of many of the violent conflicts that we have had. I think we need to step in and discuss the origin of these conflicts from a different perspective. I am convinced it can have an important impact in future peace agendas. So Diana, how is Mexico City, but above all the partners of the forum, looking at this topic, and what do we want to achieve with that forum?
Sí, gracias Emilia y gracias a todos los organizadores de este espacio por incluir la presencia de las organizaciones y las ciudades que estamos organizando el Foro Mundial sobre para la construcción de ciudades y territorios de paz. Buenos días, buenas tardes y buenas noches a muchos de ustedes. Veo que hay ciudades en donde son ya buenas noches. Y en este espíritu de ciudades internacionales voy a cambiar el idioma para hablar en español esta vez. En los últimos años, la comunidad internacional hemos reconocido que el desarrollo sostenible solo podemos lograrlo a través de garantizar la igualdad y la paz en nuestros territorios. Las estrategias de paz que los gobiernos locales impulsemos para reconstruir nuestras sociedades, sobre todo en este momento después del COVID-19, son fundamentales. La paz entendida no solo como la ausencia de violencia, como lo decían ustedes hace un momento, sino como paz positiva, es decir, aquella que se construye a través del desarrollo económico, el acceso a los servicios sociales básicos, la educación, la salud, la cultura, la vivienda, la protección social. En esta crisis nos dimos cuenta de la importancia de universalizar estos servicios y el acceso a estos servicios, pero también el acceso al espacio público, el derecho a la ciudad. Es decir, la garantía de todos los derechos humanos como la base de la paz. Y nos gustaría pensar que este proceso de reconstrucción de nuestras sociedades después del COVID-19 nos da oportunidad de caminar en esta dirección. Es decir, de la construcción de la paz desde los derechos humanos y sociales de todas las personas. Con esta visión, desde la Ciudad de México, entonces, hemos asumido el compromiso de ser la sede de la tercera edición del Foro Mundial sobre Ciudades y Territorios de Paz. ¿Cuáles son los antecedentes de este foro? Seguramente muchos de ustedes recordarán el Foro Mundial sobre las Violencias Urbanas y la Educación para la Convivencia y la Paz. Tuvo lugar en Madrid en 1917, la segunda edición en 1918. Fue un foro promovido por las alcaldesas de Madrid, de París, de Barcelona, pero fue impulsado también por muchas de las redes y organizaciones que estamos aquí, CGLU, UCSI, Metrópolis. Y son foros en donde logramos una importante movilización política y social a nivel mundial. A través del diálogo con múltiples actores y sectores, conocimos las distintas expresiones de violencia en las ciudades y recuperamos experiencias muy valiosas a nivel territorial sobre condiciones de paz que impulsamos desde los gobiernos, las organizaciones de la sociedad civil, la academia. ¿Cuál es la visión que tenemos sobre esta tercera edición del foro? En esta edición propusimos un cambio que nos parece un cambio importante, dando prioridad a la pregunta de cómo construimos ciudades y territorios de paz, cómo abordamos la violencia. Es un giro epistemológico importante en donde proponemos trabajar con un enfoque de derechos humanos, derecho a la ciudad, a través de los derechos económicos, sociales, culturales, ambientales, con un eje transversal importante para adoptar una perspectiva de género. Las consecuencias económicas y sociales de la pandemia demandan respuestas que sean eficientes y rápidas. Sin duda, el eje rector para la reconstrucción desde nuestro punto de vista debe ser la paz, a través de una perspectiva integral en la que el tejido social y los ciudadanos están colocados en el centro. Desde ya, desde la Ciudad de México, queremos agradecer a CGLU, a Metrópolis, a ONU Habitat por facilitar este espacio y por su compromiso por construir ciudades y territorios de paz. Tenemos una gran oportunidad para repensar las bases de nuestras políticas públicas a nivel territorial y creo que este es un momento fabuloso para hacerlo. Es una oportunidad que seguramente no va a regresar. Así que, pues, muchísimas gracias por el apoyo y todos invitados a sumarnos desde ya a las actividades que empezarán a generarse alrededor de este foro. Muchas gracias.
Muchísimas gracias, Diana. Yo la verdad es que me siento así, lo comparto con Octavis, un poco humilde, porque nosotros lo que estamos es agradecidos al liderazgo de las ciudades sin las cuales no podemos avanzar este tipo de agenda, ¿no? Creo que sí que es verdad que es un momento muy simbólico, muy fuerte y que tenemos que intentar que ese grupo que siempre ha estado muy concienciado sobre esta temática se expanda un poquito, porque creo que va a adquirir más importancia de cara al futuro, ¿no? Y explicarlo de una manera diferente. So I think we are ready. We are ready to broaden this group. We are ready to give it new impetus, and very proud to have cities promoting this. And I cannot leave it. The 3 cities that have always been leading this have been led by women. It can be a coincidence. It can be. But I think the feminization of this debate might be very, very important. So thank you very much, Diana, Mexico, and UNDP, UN Habitat, Mayors for Peace, and all of these great organizations that are joining us. Now we're going to a very classical parts of our live learning experiences, which is the Mentimeter exercise. Get your phones ready, your iPads, whatever. We are going to ask you what you think about certain things. I think from my team, it will be Jose Alvarez that is going to guide us through it. Jose, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Emilia. As Emilia says, this is now a tradition in our LLEs. Please go to menti.com and enter the code that you're seeing on screen, 41 44 41. And as soon as people are ready, I think we can begin.
41 44 41. Let's go, Jose.
The first question that you will be asked is, in what word would you link to cities and territories of peace? We are seeing answers in a few languages. We're seeing equity, coexistence, justice, equality. I think all of which are basically what springs to mind to everybody when you think about your city as a territory of peace. Correct me if I'm wrong, Emilia.
No, absolutely. I like the issue of culture in the conclusions of the second forum. We had the right to the city and culture as 2 very strong recommendations to build the foundation. But of course, all of those concepts are accompanied by many other notions, and of course, coexistence, or this living together notion is very important for us. Trust, I love that word. We had it coming up yesterday in the exercise that we did with the Global Task Force about our inputs to the 75th anniversary of the United Nations, and human rights and justice. Well, our hearts are in the right place, I think. And feminism, there it is. Jose, let's go to the next question.
Absolutely. The next question is, what are the biggest risks that the outbreak has brought in for the consolidation of peace in our cities and territories? And you are recommended to write a short answer in saying, what do you think are the greatest risks that come out of the pandemic? Indeed, the first one we see is racism, which is of course an incredibly hot topic, seeing the latest events that have happened in the US, the marches for Black Lives Matter. We're also seeing repression, poverty, which is of course a huge risk to coexistence, inequality, discrimination. We're also seeing answers such as the social gap between the rich and the poor, increased inequalities. And yeah, it's obvious that inequality and racism are
Yeah,
barriers.
injustice is one that really captures a lot. I mean, when you have people that are treated differently, and you don't feel that that you are in a system that protects you as it protects others, or where you have the same opportunities. It is very risky. And if we look at the world at a time of pandemic like ours, where our solutions have been to stay home when most of the population didn't have a home to stay in, when the issue was physical distancing, what we called social distancing, when people are living very close to each other and cannot keep that distance, then I can imagine that those come up. You have one more question, Jose? Colleagues, it's important for you to know that these answers are being used when we build up the recommendations and also the online courses that we are preparing, massive online courses for our members and beyond on the experiences of cities and the pandemic, so that you know that it's all put used to the good of the network. So let us see. What was your question, Jose?
The last question is, what types of responses should local and regional governments prioritize to foster peace beyond the outbreak? Once the worst effects of the pandemic are gone, we're seeing that participants are valuing the human rights approach, education and awareness raising, as well as advancing diversity, which is of course essential to fostering peace in our territories.
They are close, all of them, eh?
Yes, they're all considered very important. Of course, human rights comes first in basically all of the responses we're seeing, as is diversity.
I think it's also very, very interesting. If I would have asked this question, for instance, in a UN environment, I think the legal framework for sanctions would be much higher. But in the reality of city practitioners, legal frameworks, we all know, might not be that useful. You really need to walk the talk and to raise awareness and to charm everybody behind your measures. I think that's a significant difference, but they are all very close. So thank you very much, Jose, for this exercise. It does give us the pulse of the room, I would say, and we will make sure that it is reflected in our recommendations. So now, with this exercise, I need to wish you the best of luck, Diana, because you are going to be facilitating the first exchange, the first round table with an amazing lineup of speakers. Good luck to you, sister.
Thank you very much, Emilia. And indeed, we have the first panel with 4 speakers representing different regions and different perspectives on the issue of peace. What is the agenda of cities and territories of peace? I will ask panelists to take 4 minutes, please, for your presentation. We want to hear from all of you, and I am sure there is going to be questions, and we want to leave some time for that, for interaction. So please, 4 minutes for each one of you. We have first Patricia Torres Rey, a state senator in the state of Minnesota. Patricia, you have the floor for 4 minutes, please.
Good morning. Buenos dias. I am in Minnesota. I'm in the city of Minneapolis. Again, my name is Patricia Torres Ray. I'm a state senator representing Senate District 63, which is one of the most diverse districts in the state of Minnesota. I have been a senator for 14 years and have had the privilege to be a person that is connected to a large network of people who are very diverse, who are working to really organize grassroots efforts to influence policy. I am delighted to be with you today. I think that the work that you are doing is really more important than ever. And so thank you for inviting me to be part of this conversation. I am very excited to hear about the plans for your conference in Mexico. I was part of a tour of a talk, La Caravana Tóxica, to talk about environmental issues impacting Mexico. So and we have a large population, of course, of Mexico here in Minnesota. I was invited to share some of the experiences that we're living that perhaps you have seen. I think the world is watching Minnesota and really learning about what is happening in Minneapolis today. An African-American man was arrested in a convenience store, and during the arrest, the police officer that arrested him murdered this man with excessive force. And the result of that is that there has been a response from the community to ask for a complete redesign of our police system and addressing the inequalities that exist in this state. Perspective, we have some of the best indicators in terms of well-being in the state of Minnesota. We are first in the nation in education, first in healthcare, first in housing. But when you separate people of color and indigenous people from these numbers, you realize that we have the worst indicators for these populations. So we're 48, 49, 50 when it comes to education, healthcare, housing, and job opportunities for minorities in this state. The inequalities that exist in this state are deep and are known, and we as a state have been working on these issues for a very long time. I am the chair of state and local government, so I get to coordinate policy with mayors and city council members from all over the state of Minnesota. That is the work that I do in the Minnesota Senate. What I find is that the innovative ideas and the coalitions that are being created by local cities and local governments are incredibly important right now. And I will talk about 4 things because the time is short. I think that activism has played a significant role in recognizing that we need to do more, not only to recognize these inequalities, but the lack of action and the lack of knowledge at the government level of the real problems that exist in local communities. So activists are educating us and helping us really understand what those problems are and exposing these to the world. The second one is the change in policy that is absolutely imperative. We are not really recognizing that many of the policies that we have in place were put in place are obsolete and that they need to be revised. The third one is networking, and this is so important and relevant to this group because we are learning that our work needs to be global. Our economy is a global economy. The work that we need to do to be able to do social change really needs to be in partnership with the world, but it needs to be born at the local level so that we can inform the world about what is happening at the local level, and also teach experiences, because as we are living experiences in Minneapolis and moving forward, we can also tell the world how we're doing this work. So the networking is an imperative right now. Communication is a big part of the work that we need to do, that we're doing right now. There are many parts and many cities in the world. I was born in Colombia. work with South America very intensely and realize that not many, that activists are not protected, that they are risking their lives by, speaking about their local struggles and problems. And that is where many of the European cities and the North American cities and many other cities can become part of a network that amplify their voices and protect the lives of the activists that are working at the local level. So the support, the network, the communication that we need to do among cities and among leaders and activists that are working at the local level is imperative today. And I believe that your work has been relevant and is more relevant, is more important. And the more we can connect our voices and learn from our experiences, the more able we are going to be to, be effective. And finally, I think an issue that I work in, that I have been working on for a very long time is the election of women and minorities. Because if we don't bring the perspective of women and minorities to the tables of power, we're not going to be able to change the dynamic. The people who make the decisions about these cities and about these countries need to reflect the populations that are represented in these states and need to have the experience necessary to shape policy. So that's one of my number one priorities, is the election of women and minorities. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Patricia. Very challenging times indeed. You are living in the state of Minnesota, but a very clear agenda with very well identified action points, which are not only local, but they're global. The challenges that you're living now became global very, very quickly. And all of the points that you have mentioned here are relevant for all of our cities. So thank you very much for this. Next, we are going to invite Nadine Burber, the Chief Resilient Officer in Ramallah. You have the floor for 4 minutes, please.
Hi, thank you. It's a pleasure to be among you today. And I'm glad also to be sharing the experience of the city of Ramallah and the measure that has been taken in order to contain the outbreak of the virus. So I would like to share with you a presentation, and I would go quickly on that, try not to pass the time. Our management of the coronavirus went through phases from lockdown to confinement to easing of the lockdown until we are now into a complete reopening gradually to the city. But I would like to go back to the resilience building that we have adopted starting in 2017 that has aided us to be proactively responsive to the crisis and to the coronavirus. So if you would look at the wheel that's on the right of the screen, we would see that the major drivers of resilience were leadership, strategy, health, well-being, economy and society, infrastructure, and innovation. And if you take the example of the COVID crisis, we would see how actually a health crisis has affected the economy and the society and the peace and the social cohesion, and how good leadership and strategy was able to lift up these crises. So for us, Ramallah-based, we started working on an emergency plan to make sure that the service provision and the critical services is reaching everybody at all levels of the city. We started doing that by categorizing the city into 19 zones. Usually there are 9 zones that we do spatial planning, and we make sure that services are provided to these neighborhoods. But during the crisis, we were very critical to make sure that every neighborhood and sub-neighborhood, we are able to keep track of the data and the services reaching to all citizens, and that we are in good communications with everyone in all locations of the city. And in order to facilitate our effective involvement of citizens in the city, we had to go through and adapt our services, which is transforming into digitalizing our services. And knowing that at the beginning, when the outbreak of the virus was happening, people did not have enough information about or facts about the virus. So we were feeling that the people were panicking sometimes and they were lacking information. And that's when we had to step in and we had to provide citizens with the data needed and to make ourselves really accessible to people anytime. And that, of course, included awareness campaigns, communication, data analysis and gathering, and also data sharing with partners in order to sustain the availability of the services at all times. And for us, we knew that the resilience building, or also the peacekeeping, will entitle that we have the community at the center of our work. And that's why we needed people not only to be service recipients, but also to be active participants. And that's when we called for young city youth to volunteer in communicating in their neighborhoods or supporting our work in their surroundings. And we have received over 700 applicants, and we distributed them among the city, and we try to leverage this youth empowerment even during critical times. And this is when we needed to make sure that we are listening to people, and this is a two-way relationship, that we're listening to them, they're listening to us, we're understanding each other, and we are working together to lift up the outbreak. And we also wanted to make sure that people are engaged in responding to the crisis. And then we announced for solutions coming from the community, being initiatives coming from the community. And we asked citizens at all groups of citizens to share with us any kind of initiative that we can use to respond to the crisis. And some of them suggested that we can convert one of our annual city events for planning to be home-based event during lockdown, and we did that, and we distributed plans, and citizens were happy with this initiative to be responded to. Also, our response to the crisis was that we needed to make sure that all vulnerable groups are being engaged in the community life and in the transformative community life. And this is where we needed to communicate with seniors who volunteered in, for example, virtual storytelling or providing live sports classes. We also needed to make sure that even the kids who are living in underprivileged locations are participating in social online events. And also we made sure that cultural events are reaching everyone at their homes by broadcasting open concerts such as the Jazz Days. And knowing that we come from a religious context, we also needed to make sure that citizens are able to celebrate their religious norms even under crisis. And then that's why we maintain the annual celebrations, but we converted them from physical congregations into virtual congregations, such as the festivals of Ramadan, of the Easter celebrations and all that. And of course, like now, we will be seriously now more be working on the localization and the viability of peace building, because we know that any disagreement in power can lead to losing the development gains even when it's achieved. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Nadine. A very rich experience, access to information and to all the services provided by the state in a situation like the one we are living, a very important basis to promote action from the community. So thank you very much for this experience you shared with us. And next we are going to have Vladimir Rodriguez. He's the High Counselor for Victims' Rights, Peace and Reconciliation in the Mayor's Office in Bogota. So Vladimir, you have 4 minutes, please.
Hi, good morning, good afternoon, and good night for all. I talk in Spanish because the time and the clarity for this intervention, okay? Bueno, muchas gracias a UCLG, Metrópolis y UN Habitat por el espacio. Básicamente, el mensaje principal que queremos plantear es que en ciudades como Bogotá, donde tenemos la presencia hoy de aproximadamente casi 400.000 víctimas del conflicto armado que durante más de 60 años tuvimos en el país, y la presencia de un poco más de 1.200 excombatientes que dejaron las armas e ingresaron a la democracia, con unos índices de desigualdad social que llegan a considerarse como los terceros más altos en el planeta, se ha generado a raíz de la situación de afectación por el COVID-19 un incremento en cierto tipo de violencias urbanas, las cuales han generado una situación de desconfianza y de pérdida de interacción de los ciudadanos, tanto con el espacio público en términos materiales, como en el espacio simbólico de construcción y de colectiva que permite una trascendencia de estas situaciones de desigualdad. La violencia, en particular, aquella ligada a la violencia intrafamiliar, la violencia urbana en delitos menores, ha aumentado debido a la falta de mecanismos pacíficos de resolución de conflictos en la ciudad que transiten a través de formas comunitarias que permeen los diferentes y diversos escenarios de gestión de lo público. Bogotá, al tener esta condición material objetiva de desigualdad social y una población en un alto nivel de vulnerabilidad, sumado a el escenario de transición de un conflicto armado tan violento, mediado por dinámicas de narcotráfico, ha tenido y tiene en este momento, a raíz de la situación del COVID-19, una exposición a cierto tipo de violencias que se habían visto o estaban ocultas en escenarios previos de interacción social. Y esto nos lleva entonces a la necesidad de una construcción, apropiación y resignificación del espacio público. Los tres grandes retos que tenemos en una ciudad de 8 millones de habitantes, con los niveles de pobreza y vulnerabilidad extrema más altos del país, parten por tres premisas principales. La primera, la identificación, la recuperación y la construcción colectiva de la memoria histórica de la violencia urbana. Es muy importante la disputa en el campo de la memoria, la construcción de paz, la construcción de reconciliación, de escenarios que permitan el diálogo entre los diferentes actores que vivieron de manera directa el conflicto armado y las sociedades que fueron parte y estuvieron atravesadas en su construcción simbólica y en su construcción material por las dinámicas de violencia derivadas del conflicto armado, necesitan recuperar la memoria histórica. Y en este campo de disputa, que es la memoria, poner de presente los conceptos de verdad, justicia transicional, justicia dialógica y justicia restaurativa, como mecanismo de reconstrucción tanto del tejido social como sobre todo de la confianza ciudadana en las instituciones y en el sentido colectivo de apropiación de elementos que permitan la no repetición de los errores y de los horrores del conflicto. De igual manera, otra apuesta fundamental es la resignificación de los espacios públicos asociados a la violencia urbana. La resignificación parte de hacer unos ejercicios de modernización, intervención, tanto en zonas urbanas como en los entornos rurales que hacen parte del distrito capital como región y que a su vez alimentan los diferentes canales y los diferentes circuitos, tanto de personas como de diferentes tráficos asociados a las violencias. El tercero, una promoción de la apropiación de los espacios públicos mediante la convivencia pacífica. Una vez superada la pandemia, en términos de lo concreto, de territorio apropiado por las comunidades y sus vecinos y sus entornos vecinales, pero desde ya en las dinámicas de aislamiento que se han venido reglamentando y aplicando en Bogotá, estamos volviendo a lo pequeño, al barrio, a la calle, alejándonos un poco de estas dinámicas de las despensas, de las grandes superficies, de los escenarios de las multinacionales y los espacios de aglomeración que en términos generales en nuestras ciudades se habían venido construyendo, escenarios desligados del tejido social barrial micro. Estamos volviendo a generar una promoción de una apropiación de la tienda de barrio, los vecinos, el entorno protector, las manzanas de cuidado, enfocadas, claro está, en la garantía de los derechos de los más vulnerables y en particular de las mujeres víctimas de la violencia en Bogotá, los cuales son un objetivo principal para poder superar dinámicas que se han presentado y que se siguen presentando en términos de violencia. En Bogotá las mujeres hacen parte y la construcción de enfoques diferenciales a sexualidades no hegemónicas, fundamental como un enfoque integrado, no transversal, sino integrado en toda la política pública del Distrito Capital, liderado por la primera alcaldesa con sexualidad no hegemónica que ha tenido por elección popular el Distrito Capital y el país en general. Esto nos lleva entonces a respondernos cuáles son esos mensajes principales y esas ideas centrales que desde la ciudad estamos intentando generar para constituir a Bogotá en no solamente un escenario de reconstrucción y de reconciliación post-COVID y durante las acciones de política pública que se toman en el marco de la pandemia y de la emergencia, sino también para que Bogotá, en este escenario de un país que está transitando a un escenario de post-conflicto después de una guerra de más de 60 años, pueda convertirse en un epicentro, en un generador, en un irradiador de la implementación de los acuerdos de paz efectivo en el territorio. Y esto lo logramos a través de 3 mensajes principales. El primero, la empatía y la solidaridad para la convivencia pacífica. Y aquí la justicia transicional, los sistemas de verdad judicial en clave de justicia restaurativa son fundamentales. No la justicia punitiva, no la justicia ordinaria, sino en la justicia dialógica, la que permite que los diferentes actores del conflicto puedan, de una manera concertada, guiada, en profundidad, lograr acuerdos que permitan, además, que el campo de la disputa de los ciudadanos se haga a través de las diferentes vías que la democracia facilita. Esto, claro está, en un país que requiere oponer de manera fuerte el diálogo a la acción violenta para la deliberación en torno a las diferentes posiciones o posturas políticas o ideológicas que se pueden presentar en torno a ciertos puntos en particular. Adicionalmente, los diálogos diversos para la promoción de la cultura ciudadana. Bogotá, al ser la ciudad receptora de las regiones del país, en una nación que ha tenido unas disputas regionales muy profundas y marcadas por la guerra, requiere hacer un diálogo diverso, reconociendo las diferencias y las nuevas ciudadanías emergentes en una situación de emergencia, valga el pleonasmo, como en la que nos pone el COVID-19. Y por último, el despertar de una conciencia para resolver problemáticas sociales desde la colectividad, desde la empatía, desde la construcción de ese escenario micro, barrial, comunitario, que permite que las dificultades en los territorios en Bogotá, al ponerse en evidencia en esta crisis, se puedan resolver a través de las herramientas que consoliden cultura ciudadana. Muchas gracias y creo que dejo allí por el tema del tiempo.
Thank you very much, Vladimir. The experience of Colombia in general and Bogota in particular is very relevant for this rethinking about new ways to build peace from the specific territories and our cities. So we're going to go back to you to continue with this conversation and perhaps in writing as well, because I'm sure there is a very rich experience there to bring back to the conversation. The last speaker in this first panel is going to be Antonio Carlos Lopez da Silva. He's the Deputy Mayor of Praia. So please, sir, you have 4 minutes.
Buenos días, buenas tardes, buenas noches. Yo soy Antonio López da Silva, yo soy vicealcalde de Praia. También coordeno la cultura, ambiente, sanidad. También ambiente y sanidad. Yo voy a hablar de una experiencia de una ciudad muy chiquita, Praia, africana, una ciudad africana, que tiene también en este momento graves problemas con COVID-19. Pero yo quería hablar primero de la importancia que nosotros damos a las asociaciones comunitarias, de la sociedad civil. Desde 2008 nosotros tenemos un contacto cercano, creamos un momento importante que se llamamos cámara abierta para 15 en 15 días escuchar el alcalde, el presidente de cámara, alcalde, sus compañeros, escuchar a la población lo que quiere hacer desde 2008. Entonces también creamos un grupo de asociaciones de desarrollo comunitario que trabajamos conjuntamente en varios momentos, quer en la construcción, quer en el esporte, en la cultura, etcétera, etcétera. Por tanto, no fue muy difícil crear una estructura, institucionalizar algunas cosas relativamente al COVID-19. Así, nosotros, cuando tuvimos el primer caso de COVID, que fue de un turista que vino de Europa, creamos un grupo en Praia que se llama Praia Sem Estrés. Sem estrés, ¿por qué? Porque en la primera reunión todo el mundo estaba con los ojos abiertos, demasiadamente abiertos. El Praia Sem Estrés es un grupo que constituido por personas de alcaldía, personas de organización social civil, Guardia Municipal, Policía Nacional, Delegacia de Salud de Praia. También creamos una línea verde que se llama Línea Verde COVID-19, que da información a las personas que se sientan con algún problema constante durante 24 horas. Creamos una línea verde de protección social para que las personas puedan inscribirse en el cadastro social único. Creamos una plataforma de pre-cadastramiento donde todas las personas con necesidades especiales, priorizando las personas de edad, las madres solteras con hijos menores de 12 años, también con el apoyo del gobierno central y de la sociedad civil. Por tanto, nosotros pensamos que sin la sociedad civil involucrado fuertemente, difícilmente podemos ganar la lucha contra el COVID-19 y difícilmente podemos ganar la lucha del desarrollo de nuestro país y también difícilmente conseguiremos atingir la Agenda 2030. Creemos que Cabo Verde, mientras sea un país muy chiquito, tiene problemas enormes de pobreza, problemas de desigualdad, de exclusión, que probablemente trabajando en la Agenda 2030 y con la participación fuerte de todas las personas, de las asociaciones sociales de base, de articulación muy fuerte entre el poder central, el poder local y también las empresas tienen un papel importantísimo. Nosotros podemos atingir un grado de desarrollo que, por lo menos que todos sean iguales, no solo perante la ley, pero también iguales en términos de oportunidades. Y pienso que es esto que el gobierno de Praia. Yo creo que nosotros queremos que durante el COVID, el periodo de emergencia del COVID-19, donde muchas personas que trabajan de forma informal tengan la posibilidad de tener comida, de tener un ambiente bueno en su casa. Y pronto. Yo quería terminar solo diciendo que nosotros aquí en Praia somos solidarios con todos los afroamericanos y digamos que los que están manifestando en Estados Unidos, en Europa, en África, de forma pacífica, están haciendo un gran trabajo para el mundo. Gracias.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Another angle to the to the story of how to build peace. We are just 1 minute behind schedule in this panel, so I thank you very much to all of you for keeping your time. There is much to learn from the experience, the 4 experiences that we heard. The importance of community participation, based on the idea of rights, making universal access to information, to basic services for all and so on as the basis to build stronger communities and conditions for peace. The need to understand local realities. Within the same city, there are different realities, there are different cities people live in, because most of our societies are unequal societies. So the importance of understanding the microcosmos in which people live. Hidden violence, it came out as an important topic in the conversation, in the presentation of all 4 panelists, and the importance of bringing multiple actors into the conversation to make sure that we are able to build a minimum consensus to move forward. There is many more issues that we need to reflect on based on these presentations, but this is going to be the process of building towards the 3rd Forum of Cities and Territories for Peace. So I thank you very much for sharing with us these rich experiences. And now I think we turn to the next panel, Emilia, with 2 minutes behind the schedule now.
That's correct. You've done a great job. Thank you very much on time, and very interesting presentations that cover many different aspects of this conversation. The difficulty with peace is exactly that. I mean, what is peace is a very broad notion. We've said it is built up of security and trust and well-being and being able to enjoy with each other, to be creative, to think about other things than security. And my panel is going to be tackling all of these aspects as well. We'll continue with that conversation, and I would particularly appreciate our panelists to actually put a little bit of a mirror in front of us and let us see how this work that we have been doing for quite a while, because the panelists that I have with me have been working on this notion for a very long time. How is the pandemic making us look at this from a different, is it from a different perspective? Is it the same perspective enhanced? What are we experiencing? And I would like to start with a good friend and a very important partner for UCLG, Basu Gauden. We were together in Durban. It feels like a century ago, well, not a century, but a decade ago, a different world back then, only November. You are the executive director of the African Center for the Constructive Resolution of Disputes, and coming from South Africa, I think you do know what you're talking about. Basu, how does Accord look at the whole issue of peace in this new context? You are someone that has been working with the Security Council of the United Nations on many resolutions. You know better than anybody else how hard it is to reach joint resolutions in our current multilateral system. How do you see the role of local governments, and how do you think that keeping peace looks like in the, I don't know if we can call it aftermath, in the new COVID world? Basu. 4 minutes.
Yeah, thank you, Emilia. Always a pleasure to see you and to work with you and UCLG. And also thank you to UN Habitat and Metropolis for this wonderful, wonderful occasion. Let me start, Emilia, by saying, you know, and I know you share this passion also, there is now a huge debate about deglobalization. And I think really when we look at what we are seeing in front of us, the debate should not be about deglobalization, but rather the discovery of a new globalization. This is what we are seeing, the discovery of an expanded globalization. We are not building walls now. We are building bridges of using technology. And these are the bridges that we are building in front of us now. So I just want to say, you know, and this is very pertinent to our discussion about multilateralism. Because now more than ever, we need multilateralism in the world. There is no debate about it. Yet at the same time, for centuries, cities have been, and now for centuries into the future, cities will become the center of social existence. What that means, of course, is then we have to talk about, in the context of social existence, what does coexistence mean? And this, I think, is really where I want to start. What have we been doing? And I think, you know, we are talking now not so much about post-COVID, but post-lockdown, post-curfews, because this is where the challenge is going to be. Post-COVID is probably going to be maybe in 18 months or 2 years, but post-lockdown is in the next few weeks. It's already there for most people, and we are seeing now a number of huge challenges. I'm very happy that Patricia from Minnesota was here, because in many ways, you know, Patricia comes from supposedly one of the most developed parts of the world, and here we are in South Africa and the rest of Africa, maybe in other parts, Asia, Latin America, some of the most underdeveloped countries. Yet when you look structurally at the systemic problems that Minnesota has and the systemic problems we have, they are very similar. And therefore, you know, this opportunity to share experiences. So what has been our experience so far? And we have been quite involved as a court now with COVID-19 across Africa, not just in our city here, but working, of course, with UCLG Africa and our other partners to look at bringing solutions to this problem. So as you know, we have had deep structural problems that we were already dealing with, poverty, unemployment, and inequality, of course, being the underlying causes of that. What COVID-19 has done, not the virus in and of itself, but measures taken to stem the spread of the virus, have had unintended consequences. And what are those unintended consequences? They are the social and economic dislocation that has taken place through lockdowns, through curfews, through states of emergencies, etc. And the fact that many, many more people are going to be employed, are already unemployed. Then the gender-based violence. We've seen a sharp increase in gender-based violence. And what we have seen though, you know, we as an organization, we have been tracking conflicts now, or potential conflicts, in 55 countries across Africa on 7 different categories of conflicts. And essentially, what we have found is that conflict has actually subsided. It has dropped. Crime has also dropped. But there are certain conflicts and certain crime that has increased. So gender-based violence has increased, and insurgencies, radicalized insurgencies and trafficking has increased. Why? Because police and military are now concentrated in dealing with the health crisis, and therefore these traffickers and insurgencies have taken advantage of the vacuum that has been created. But now, why has conflict and crime dropped? It's dropped, and this is a dangerous thing. It's dropped because we put a lid on conflict and crime, because people are at home. So there aren't all these social protests. And I share your view that was expressed earlier, that conflict is not a bad thing. Actually, conflict is necessary for social change. Without conflict, you won't have social change. But how do we manage conflict? And so let me say how we are doing this. Because what will come when in the post-lockdown is that when this lid is lifted, what we had already with unemployment, poverty, etc., would now have been exacerbated because more people are unemployed. So what you're going to see is that COVID-19 acts as a conflict multiplier. This is what we are finding. So in the context of that, what are we doing? 3 things. The first is we are immediately now, as a preventive measure across the continent, building local and national capacities for peace. We are training people in mediation, doing it online, because now we cannot do it face-to-face. So we have migrated all of our training materials online. We are working with youth groups, women's groups, universities, city officials, etc., preparing everybody. And I was saying to our American colleagues, one of the problems they had now with the proliferation of protests and that turning violent across the United States is they have not been able to activate local structures to actually mediate and negotiate these conflicts. They've used force to deal with it rather than using mediation. Your first response should be mediation. So that's the first thing. The second thing that we are doing is, as you know, we have continued to promote these intergenerational dialogues, working with young people, because again, what we are seeing across many parts of the world now is that a lot of this is an intergenerational struggle. So how do we ensure that we build intergenerational dialogues? We've just completed, as you know, 31, working with yourselves also in partnership, and we wish to continue with these dialogues. And we hope that, you know, with our colleagues from other parts of the world, we can also see how we can work on that. And the last thing, of course, is ensuring that we have evidence-based research so that we deal with fake news, etc. Thank you very much, Emilia.
Thank you very much, Basu. And I think we need to, this intergenerational dialogue was a very important part of a very important building block of our Congress, and where we worked on together. I think this new virtual environment and this new need to rethink the world is giving us a very good opportunity to relaunch that and to see how we can work on that.
Absolutely.
So I do think there is a need for local and regional government leaders to go into that dialogue, not only with youth from their own places, but also beyond. So I look forward to continuing that conversation, not only that work, that action. So we'll talk, Basu. Thank you so much for that. Let us go now to a mayor, to the mayor of Granollers, not a very big city, a well-known city here in Catalonia, with a long-standing tradition on peace matters and very involved in mayors for peace. Josep Mayoral, ¿cómo estamos mirando a la agenda de los alcaldes por la paz? ¿Alguna perspectiva nueva o con las que teníamos nos valía ya?
No, hemos hablado de Durban. En Durban muchos municipios comprometidos por la paz, marcamos en rojo el calendario de 2020. Decidimos que era un año importante y nos pusimos a trabajar muy activamente para hacerlo importante. Tanto es así que el 21 de febrero de este año, con la alcaldesa Ada Colau y con ICANN, presentamos una campaña para todos los municipios europeos para apoyar el Tratado de Prohibición de las Armas Nucleares que las Naciones Unidas habían aprobado en 2015. Este era un camino fantástico, porque además tenía un par de horizontes más. El final de la Segunda Guerra Mundial, teníamos previsto también hacer una acción entre y queríamos estar también en Hiroshima para conmemorar el 75 aniversario de la bomba atómica, y queríamos culminar el año en México con el foro contra las violencias y por la ecuación por la paz. Esta era la perspectiva. Efectivamente, el 21 de febrero presentamos la campaña y el 14 de marzo nos encerramos en casa. Cambio sustancial y efectivamente encerrarnos en casa para hacer algunas cosas importantes. La primera, para gestionar efectivamente una emergencia. En segundo lugar, para que nuestros municipios, nuestros ciudadanos vieran al ayuntamiento como una referencia. La máquina municipal tenía que seguir dando servicios. La tercera, para mirar hacia el futuro, para buscar las perspectivas que nos tienen que ayudar a buscar un nuevo camino después de la pandemia. Y en cuarto lugar, para recordar que los municipios solos no tendremos la solución. En un momento de clara recentralización, en un momento en que los gobiernos de los estados y de las regiones nos hacen sentir a veces espectadores, nosotros queremos ser protagonistas. Desde este punto de vista, el trabajo de CGLU en estos días ha sido impresionante y yo quiero agradecerlo. Estamos aquí para recordarnos que tenemos que seguir trabajando juntos y que un camino imprescindible es el buscar estos espacios de trabajo conjunto. Por eso, mantener la perspectiva y la bandera del Fórum sobre las violencias urbanas como un elemento clave es fundamental. Yo querría recordar los 9 compromisos que adoptamos en Madrid porque me parecen válidos, me parecen esenciales. Son los que nos tienen que llevar al trabajo conjunto para fomentar la paz en nuestras ciudades. La primera, acordamos 9 cuestiones. La primera, luchar contra las violencias interpersonales. La segunda, defender las ciudades delante de las guerras. La tercera, prevenir y combatir extremismos violentos. La cuarta, combatir el racismo y la xenofobia. La quinta, incorporar el hecho migratorio en nuestro trabajo. La sexta, luchar contra el crimen organizado. La séptima, prevenir y combatir la corrupción. La octava, luchar contra las violencias hacia las mujeres. Y la novena, garantizar el derecho a la ciudad. ¿Cómo vamos a hacer esto? ¿Qué dijimos en Madrid? ¿Qué hay que revisar o repasar y refrendar en México? Todo esto lo tenemos que hacer desarrollando agendas locales propias. Cada ciudad debe mirarse, analizar sus violencias y a partir de aquí generar sus propias estrategias, su propia agenda para conseguir que el desarrollo interno en sus ciudades sea a partir del diálogo, la palabra, la construcción colectiva. Y a la hora tiene que hacerlo no solamente mirándose hacia adentro, sino mirándose hacia afuera. Reconociendo también aquellos conflictos que, de alguna manera, están entrelazados siempre con cualquier cosa que pase en nuestra ciudad. Para mí Bogotá está en la esquina de al lado del ayuntamiento, porque tengo amigos colombianos que han venido aquí huyendo de la guerra. Esta visión global es imprescindible. Agendas para la paz, para construir entornos pacíficos en el espacio urbano, buscando la lucha contra las diferencias, buscando también esos espacios de romper, de sellar brechas que tenemos. Trabajo conjunto del municipalismo con un liderazgo claro del diálogo, de la palabra y de la construcción colectiva. Gracias.
Muchísimas gracias, alcalde. Yo creo que esa sensación de que Bogotá, México, pero también Durban o Volgograd están al lado de la esquina, es súper importante, es muy, muy importante en nuestro contexto y que creo que esa es quizás un poco la decepción que hemos tenido como ciudadanos del mundo, aquellos de nosotros que nos movíamos con mucha libertad cuando de repente las soluciones han sido de nuevo la emergencia de fronteras, ¿no? en las soluciones. Y que hay una buena razón para ello, pero es un poco como el problema que nos traía desde Bogotá el uso del espacio público. Sin el espacio público, esa cohesión social, ¿cómo se hace? Ese vivir juntos, ¿cómo se hace? Esos son retos nuevos que tenemos que reinventar, y creo que la solidaridad y la definición de libertades adquiere un significado muy, muy, muy nuevo. Y que redes como la nuestra tienen que ayudarnos a llevar esas discusiones por buen camino, ¿no, alcalde? Creo que todavía esa agenda la podemos defender en este 2020 tan especial.
Lo haremos, sigue marcado en rojo.
Exacto, sigue marcado en rojo y ahí produciendo, ya verán. Yo siempre digo que mañana vamos a ser más listos que hoy, más inteligentes. We have been in Africa with Basu, in Europe with Mayor Mayoral, and now I would like to go to Eurasia, to Russia, to the city of Volgograd. Hard to convince citizens that they need to stay at home and stop the activities that they had to develop, right? Challenging times. How does Volgograd look at this context when thinking of building the foundations of peace? Maria de Lleva.
Yes, thank you. Dear Ms. Secretary General, dear webinar participants, dear colleagues. Since I'm responsible for international relations, I will be basically speaking about how we dealt with international relations when they were among the least concerned, when borders were closed and contacts were limited. Well, Volgograd is better known as Stalingrad, and in 1942 it was nearly completely destroyed by the Nazi army, yet remained unconquered, which is now believed to be a turning point in World War II. The key to that great triumph were the joint efforts of dozens of nations and peoples, because Volgograd, not only geographically, has always been a crossroads of cultures. The defenders of our city would come from all corners of the USSR during the war. This is probably racial and national prejudice is now the least of our concerns, because Volgograd is inhabited by more than 120 nationalities and religions, and living in peace. So another crucial outcome of the Battle of Stalingrad was the birth of the international twinning movement. In 1944, the citizens of Stalingrad and the British Coventry reached out to each other, and this became an example of people's or public diplomacy, which means a diplomacy based on informal contacts, and so never stops, no matter what the situation in the world is. Today, Volgograd is happy to have 44 twinning partner cities in Russia and abroad. And to cite one fact, in the last 7 years, 780 school and university students have participated in our intercity exchanges. And it was people's diplomacy that became a solid support for Volgograd during the pandemic. With twin and partner cities, we organize on a regular basis an exchange of information. We exchanged words of encouragement and shared our best practices for social and economic support of our residents. In China in particular, Volgograd has 2 twin cities, and we closely follow their situation to be ready if they need any help. We assisted the city of Chengdu in Sichuan in contacting Volgograd's producers of personal protection equipment. And later, Chengdu, when the situation stabilized, in its turn offered to Volgograd humanitarian aid. Also, during the lockdown, we managed to draft and get approved a cooperation agreement with the 3rd Chinese city, Suizing, and renewed the cooperation with the Italian Turin. Next. Large-scale events. In May, there were supposed to be celebrations dedicated to the victory in the Great Patriotic War. Lots of twin and partner cities were invited, but of course, the pandemic had none of it. And still, our friends and partners shared with us the joy of the event. At our suggestion, over 70 persons from 15 cities abroad recorded themselves singing Katyusha, the song that was a symbol of hope during the war for Soviet soldiers. And a compilation of their videos was demonstrated on Volgograd Municipal TV. There was much rejoicing from the veterans and our citizens. Our current city development project is called Volgograd as a capital of people's diplomacy, by which we aim to earn their recognition as a center of international humanitarian cooperation and peace promotion. This conception was supported by the Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs and by the Russian president. In our Volgograd State University, we have a People's Diplomacy Center that organizes seminars on international relations, on combating terrorism and extremism. And during this confinement, we managed to extend the cooperation between it and the city of Volgograd, but by signing an additional agreement. So we did lots of documents and thought how to ameliorate this cooperation. Besides, Volgograd is developing as an international expert platform. We have been holding youth conferences since 2012, gender forums and twin city forums. Unfortunately, this year we had to cancel another international youth conference for peace in the future, held together with Hiroshima, but we'll surely continue to have a part of it online. And since 2016, we have annually organized the International Forum of People's Diplomacy, Dialogue on the Volga, which aims to strengthen cooperation and expand public relations, promote peaceful and stable development of peoples and countries. Fortunately, it is scheduled for October 31st, the World Cities Day. If in 2016 our forum united experts from 12 countries, in 2019 there were already 36 countries involved and represented. So we really hope that this year it will go as scheduled, and it would be a pleasure for me to invite you all to join it. So we have our fingers crossed for this very important event in October, and hope that there will be still many experts who manage to come after the COVID is over. Thank you for your attention very much. I hope that pieces of information have been helpful.
Thank you very much, and thank you for actually reminding us the very roots of our movement. You know, in 1913 we held the first conference that was before the wars, as international movement of local governments, but the twinning efforts after the Great Wars was what launched our movement with more force than ever. And you would call it people's diplomacy, we call it city diplomacy, transformative diplomacy, all with the same aim. Very important to keep working internationally, even in these hard times. So thank you for pushing that agenda forward and for making citizens aware that it is not about deglobalization that we need to be talking about. We need those interactions more than ever. Thank you very much to our Eurasian section for appointing you and making sure that you can join us, and to Volgograd for all the efforts that you always make for the network. Thank you very much. So I'm going back to Latin America now, to Mexico City, actually. Jaime Morales, Undersecretary for Human Rights of Mexico City. Derechos humanos, secretario, algo muy importante para esta agenda de paz, ¿no? Igualdad y derechos. A usted la palabra.
Buenos días, buenas tardes, buenas noches a todos, a todas. Les damos las gracias por estar en este escenario mundial. Uno de los objetivos del gobierno de la Ciudad de México, dirigido por la doctora Claudia Sheinbaum Pardo, es contribuir en que las personas que habitan y transitan en la ciudad gocen de los derechos fundamentales, que tengan acceso a la justicia y una vida digna y en paz. La paz depende de que la gente toda tenga acceso efectivo a sus derechos humanos, a los derechos económicos, sociales, culturales y ambientales. Esta es la esencia del proyecto de la ciudad en el programa de nuestro gobierno. En nuestra respuesta al COVID ha sido, como todas en el mundo, garantizar acceso universal a los servicios de salud y apoyar el bienestar de las familias, sobre todo las más vulnerables. En ese sentido, la paz es el espíritu que guía, desde la cual se busca transformar a la Ciudad de México en un territorio incluyente, seguro, sustentable, diverso, accesible, igualitario y próspero, que sea nuestra casa. Varias acciones hemos tenido para hacer esto, y una de las fundamentales, creemos nosotros, es la estrategia de diagnóstico y seguimiento de casos de COVID-19 vía SMS gratuito. Es decir, la ciudadanía, lo que quisimos es que se quedara en casa. En una ciudad con tantas diferencias económicas, era muy complejo. Pero la saturación que hubo en los hospitales, en los ejemplos que teníamos de Europa, hizo que desde el gobierno se diseñara esta estrategia donde la gente hace un SMS, se les da un cuestionario, y ese cuestionario lo deriva a una llamada telefónica al 911, que es la línea de emergencia. Ahí un médico con una videollamada te da un diagnóstico y te atiende o te manda a un hospital. Y eso te ofrece un kit médico para que desde casa, que se llama Quédate en casa, justamente para no saturar los hospitales. Y creo que eso ha sido uno de los grandes logros, porque aún hoy que estamos en la cúspide de la curva, tenemos un 68% de camas ocupadas en hospitales COVID. Y eso nos da un margen de operación muy positivo. Creo que algunas de las acciones que hemos hecho a partir de la Secretaría de Inclusión y Bienestar Social del Gobierno de la ciudad son guía muy interesante. Uno, el trabajo con las personas mayores. A diferencia de Europa, en América Latina, nuestros viejos están en las casas, no están en estancias, y entonces se pierde de vista quién los cuida, quiénes son sus cuidadores. En este caso, lo que hizo el gobierno de la ciudad es poner un cuidador telefónico todo el tiempo, e hizo la posibilidad de juntar a las juventudes a través de un programa donde los jóvenes adoptan un viejo, y ellos son los que le llaman, son los que están al pendiente de él, y un ejército de personas de la ciudad va y les hace las compras, les lleva los medicamentos a todos aquellos que no tienen una red social, que es muy frecuente en nuestras ciudades, que la gente vieja llegue sin una red social. Olvidémonos de una red familiar. Esto tomando en cuenta aquellas que han tenido acceso a la vivienda, porque tú, Emilia, lo dijiste en algún momento, el gran problema es poderse quedar en casa si tienes casa, ¿no? Entonces, las visitas domiciliarias han sido muy importantes, y el turismo social ha sido fundamental para trabajar en esto. Es decir, el gobierno de la ciudad con su Secretaría de Cultura ha tenido 16 millones de visitas para que la gente se entretenga, porque hay un muy variado cartel ahí. Y la otra parte que nosotros queremos hacer y hacer énfasis es en los niños, niñas y adolescentes y sus cuidadores. Entonces, quizás son los temas que luego se nos olvidan, los niños y las niñas. En este descubrir de las nuevas violencias que mirábamos pero no observábamos, o viceversa, que con esta pandemia se ha puesto una gran lente de aumento en las violencias familiares. Entonces, lanzamos la estrategia ¿Cómo es la ciudad que sueñas? Y qué puedes ser tú para ayudar a construirla. Entonces, le pedimos a los chicos, a las chicas, que nos mandaran un dibujo con una etiqueta que nos dijera, porque estamos buscando recuperar las voces de la gente. Queremos escuchar a la gente. Hoy es muy complejo, como lo hemos venido oyendo, el espacio público está hoy cerrado. ¿Cómo escuchamos a la gente? ¿Cómo hacemos esa comunidad? ¿Cómo regresamos a esa cohesión si no estamos en el espacio público? Pues estamos utilizando las herramientas digitales y estamos buscando a través de ella hablar con la gente, buscar un nuevo horizonte donde esté permeado la cohesión comunitaria, la reflexión de los derechos humanos y los procesos de paz. Es así como hemos buscado que los niños nos digan cómo sueñan la ciudad, cómo nos ven, cómo quieren que seamos, cómo regresar a esta nueva comunidad. No podemos regresar a la comunidad anterior, no podemos regresar a esta normalidad donde la discriminación, la pobreza es el común denominador y no miramos. Tenemos que reflexionar sobre nosotras mismas, sobre la otredad. Tenemos que hablar con el otro, escucharnos, vigilarnos, pero como familia, como amigos. Y como bien, ni un paso atrás a la globalización. La globalización tiene que ser desde otro lado. La globalización tiene que ser a partir de ya para unirnos, no para separarnos. No podemos permitir que esta pandemia nos excluya, nos vuelva a poner las fronteras que mucha gente dio la vida para que estuvieran rotas. Entonces, lo único que nos resta decirles es que les esperamos en octubre. Estamos haciendo un camino hacia la paz. Estamos haciendo un foro mundial donde les esperamos a todas. Estamos caminando rumbo a eso. Octubre será virtual, pero lo esperamos el próximo año, el 2021, en la Ciudad de México, para que entre todas nos abracemos y sigamos construyendo la paz. Muchísimas gracias.
Muchísimas gracias, secretario, por estas palabras también muy inspiradoras, ¿no? Una de las primeras cosas que salió en la primera experiencia de aprendizaje que tuvimos como esta, hace ya 3 meses casi, fue el reclamo de los líderes y lideresas locales a no hablar de distancia social, sino hablar de distancia física y no distancia social. Y creo que eso, que su intervención abunda sobre eso cuando busca volver a oír a la gente, pensar las cosas juntos. Ahí vamos a estar en octubre y además celebrando los 75 aniversarios del multilateralismo con jefes de Estado o sin ellos. Ya estamos nosotros. Muchas gracias por esa invitación. Let me go next to Africa again, to Uganda. I've got the program coordinator in charge of peace building of the Center for Conflict Resolution, Patrick Bigwire. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but in any case, Patrick, I know you recognize me. Yes, hi, Patrick, I see you. The floor is yours.
Hi. Thank you so much and greetings from Uganda. I'm Patrick Bwire and I work with an organization called the Center for Conflict Resolution, which is a civil society organization, but we work closely with the national, local, and regional governments. So our main work is around the area of peace building and conflict transformation, building capacities of various actors. We engage in empowering youth and women. A number of projects, for example, the ones called Young Adult Peace Champions that deal with addressing the root causes and drivers of conflict. But we also facilitate leaders and the communities to come together for constructive dialogue. We do a lot of awareness on SDG 16, which is around peace and ensuring that there is participation of local actors. And here we always work as a link between the community and the government. And at regional level, we are the regional secretariat for GPAC, which is the Global Partnership for the Prevention of Armed Conflict. And we coordinate peace building efforts in Eastern and Central Africa, which brings on board 16 countries. Next. So, of course, COVID-19 is here and is here with us. So, and it has brought a number of challenges to our peace building interventions. It has disrupted our programs for peace building, which means we cannot achieve as we had set to achieve. In the region, in Uganda and Eastern and Central Africa, we've seen an increase in cases like domestic violence. In Uganda, in particular, we had around 3,000 cases of domestic violence being registered in just less than the first 1 month of the lockdown. And then we are seeing a lot of human rights violations, and this is mainly as a result of the militarization of enforcement, especially in Uganda and around Uganda. Then we have a challenge of illiteracy, because most of the communities we deal with are not able to engage in platforms like we are using today because of the literacy levels. And then we have, at the moment, lack of a harmonized cross-border approach. A country like Uganda is a landlocked country, and we have other countries around us that are not having the similar approach. A few days ago, now we have declared Tanzania a COVID-19 free country. God will help us. So the approach of God and the health approach may not have a harmonized way of doing it. Some of the few approaches that we have taken on is the online coordination. We also trying to mobilize communities around ensuring that they observe the health precautions, and then localized messages, which we are trying to pass on community through radios. And from some of the recommendations that we have so far, last month we conducted a study on SDG 16, And some of these include building the capacity of local structures, because what we have is more of ad hoc. We are trying to ensure that there is enhanced local participation involving people from the local level, and being sensitive to vulnerable groups, because we have seen women who are pregnant not being able to reach hospitals. We've seen disabled being rounded up and arrested because they are not able to run as fast as possible to avoid the curfews. And then one of the things that came up strongly is that there's going to be a lot of impact of COVID-19, and we are encouraging all stakeholders to increase funding in the post-COVID situation, because most of the livelihood of communities have been disrupted. Thank you so much, and greetings from Uganda.
Thank you very much, Patrick. Thank you for that very rich presentation and very interesting experiences in that part of the world that has not been hit by the pandemic as was to be expected. And I really hope, like you, that you can keep it that way. But also building on the many lessons you have learned from previous outbreaks that you have had. I mean, there are many good things that African countries have done in managing pandemics that I think we should also be learning from in other parts of the world. So we have reached the end of this roundtable. We've got a little bit of time because the mayor of Bangui was unable to join us very last minute. So what I'm going to do is to do a very quick round to see if there is a sentence that you are living with, that you're bringing with you home, and that you're going to be thinking about after this experience. And I would like to go to the panelists of this roundtable first. Alcalde, empiezo contigo. ¿Qué te llevas a casa? ¿Qué te ha dejado pensando después de esta sesión? Micrófono.
No, la necesidad del trabajo conjunto. Después de vernos encerrados en casa, la necesidad de abrir las puertas de las ventanas y de no solamente reconectar la sociedad, que sí es lo que hemos hecho, hemos estado encerrados en casa pero juntos. El siguiente paso es que las ciudades tienen que seguir trabajando juntas, y de estos proyectos colectivos en los que el activismo, la convivencia, la cohesión, la lucha para que nadie trate han de ser fundamentales. Es el itinerario que debemos recorrer, y también en estos momentos en que se ha claramente fortalecido el papel de los estados, es necesario que un estado suene fuerte para no ser meros espectadores, como en algunos momentos en estos procesos de pandemia nos hemos sentido.
Gracias, alcalde. Eso fue más que una frase. I'm going to Basu now, and it needs to be one sentence, Basu. Go ahead. And then I would like to invite then after Basu, I would like to invite the Vice Mayor of Libreville. She's here, Annie, and I have seen your hand. If you are there, you come next. Basu.
I think in one sentence, how do we build bridges of innovation? By having sessions like this that we learn from each other. Thank you, Emilia.
Thank you very much. Madame la maire de Libreville, est-ce que vous êtes là, Annie? Annie Christelle? Non, le micro, madame. Voilà.
Vous m'entendez?
Très bien.
Merci, félicitations à vous, ces élus Métropolis, UNU Habitat. Je voudrais juste rapidement, Madame le secrétaire général, si vous permettez, relever que toutes les initiatives peuvent être bonnes et vraiment produire de bons résultats. Mais si nous ne donnons pas à la femme sa vraie place dans ce combat, je crains que cette paix que nous voulons pour pouvoir faire en sorte que toutes les initiatives réussissent ne puissent pas être durables. Et en ce sens, je voudrais pouvoir relever que pourquoi pas la commission inclusion sociale de CGLU puisse effectivement voir, travailler sur la base de la résolution 1325 des Nations Unies, voir un peu dans quel sens les femmes peuvent effectivement, à travers différents regroupements, nous par exemple le réseau des femmes élues locales d'Afrique, l'antenne Gabon particulièrement, nous avons essayé de travailler avec la société civile, particulièrement le 16 mai dernier, puisque tous les 16 mai, nous savons que nous célébrons les journées internationales du vivre ensemble dans la paix depuis un certain nombre d'années. Donc, il faudrait vraiment redonner à la femme sa place dans cette construction, cette consolidation, cette préservation et ce maintien de la paix pour assurer le succès de toutes les initiatives. Je vous remercie encore de m'avoir donné la parole.
Non, mais merci à vous. Un point très important, et je pense qu'il y a beaucoup de monde avec nous aujourd'hui qui sent la même chose. C'est un point très, très important. Merci à vous. I don't know if there is anybody else that would like to give a very, very brief comment before we go to the next segment. Patricia, you're still here. Do you want to say something to us again?
Thank you so much for the invitation and just inviting everyone to strengthen the mission of your organization so that you can bring us together to have these type of exchanges and to create relationships that can expand, amplify our voices at the global and local level. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Patricia. And the idea is indeed that we give you this platform, but that we follow up with concrete action after this platform, that we strengthen that dialogue between civil society and local and regional governments. You know that we are starting a new series. Now we are talking about live learning experiences, and then we have one on cities, our listening experiences, where we hope to strengthen our dialogue with civil society, following your lead, because all of you have highlighted how important it is to rely on the experiences of the communities and the organized communities. So thank you so much for these inputs. We're going to go now to the presentation related to our Peace Prize. As I told you, United Cities and Local Governments has a long-standing tradition in city diplomacy and the role of cities in peacekeeping and recovery. We've been pioneering dialogues among conflict areas for a very long time. Our ongoing work in the relations between Israel and Palestine are very well known. Our efforts with North and South Korea are also quite well known. And in order to introduce the work that our UCLG Peace Prize entails, I am very pleased to give the floor to Sanne van Amerongen. I just had something written on it. Now, welcome, and jou Edward. Anne.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, I want to thank everyone in facilitating this event, which we, the UCLG Peace Prize Secretariat, think is super important because we should definitely not lose sight of our peace agenda. What the UCLG Peace Prize does, it celebrates successful initiatives undertaken by local governments and stimulates others to follow suit. It aims at not only generating international public attention for the role that local governments can play in ensuring sustainable and peaceful development, but it also creates worldwide exposure and recognition. And a winning local government receives a financial award to strengthen its peace projects. And we also help to facilitate learning exchanges with other local governments facing similar challenges. Amongst others, now in these times, we do that through organizing webinars, which we think is a great tool to create this new virtual interconnected world. The consequences of any violent conflict often manifest themselves on a local scale, which is why a local level approach is vital, also in times of crisis, which we find ourselves now. Local governments have an important role to play in situations of conflict as promoters and facilitators of peace, freedom, democracy, and prosperity. And by doing so, they contribute to the international development and peace building agenda. Therefore, local governments are instrumental in preventing conflicts, building bridges and dialogue after conflict, and promoting a peaceful environment. As I already said, local governments are also important actors in responding to crisis while monitoring and guarding the peace agenda. Especially in the crisis we find ourselves now, it becomes evident how important the role of local governments or authorities is in promoting peace and a coexistence, but also responding to a crisis. It is therefore really good to see that local authorities really take up this role in regard to the COVID-19 crisis, and how local authorities exchange knowledge among them in sessions like this, and how the UCLG Peace Prize, or how the UCLG tries to be a facilitator of exchanging knowledge and good practices. Because the role of local authorities is so essential when it comes to promoting peace, it is really our mission as the UCLG Peace Prize to inspire cities and municipalities to follow other peace initiatives and to connect them with proven good local peace examples and initiatives. The second edition of the UCLG Peace Prize has been awarded to the municipality of Arsal, Lebanon, this last November in Durban. And it's been nominated for its great efforts in creating coexistence, peace building, as well as preventing conflict. The mayor of Arsal does this through facilitating dialogue and sulha sessions, which are mediation sessions, and bringing people together. Moreover, municipality of Arsal reacts 24/7 to outbursts of conflict and prevent the further escalation of violence through direct conflict mediation and using a meager budget for reparation against wrongdoing. The example of Arsal made me think on how they are reacting 24/7 to outbursts of conflict and peace building, and how to prevent to further escalate the violence and the conflict. It is not only an example of how local authority can promote peace and coexistence, but also an example of how a local authority can respond to a crisis situation. Respond accurate, 24/7 and direct has proven to be a good way to mitigate and prevent escalation, or even now in the COVID-19 situation of spreading a virus. However, we want to stress that we should not lose sight of promoting peace due to the COVID-19 crisis. Therefore, even in these distant times, the UCLG Peace Prize tries to connect and inspire local governments to stimulate peace initiatives. At the moment, webinars pose to be a fruitful way of exchanging knowledge, and we want to keep continuing this platform as a way to stay interconnected. And as you, Emilia, already emphasized, this new virtual environment really creates many new opportunities wherein we can promote peace. So please help us in facilitating these kind of events. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Count on that. I always say that the reason why we have been so successful in this platform is because we do exist as a community.
Yes, exactly. I agree.
What this platform has allowed us to do is to include new people and to see each other more often and to have exchanges in a way which we thought before were a very big investment, and it is now a big investment in terms of time, but the community existed. So I am a true believer that now we need to rethink our world without forgetting about hugs. It's very nice to hug each other and to see each other. To have the same experience all together. But I think that there is a lot that we can indeed consolidate, and we will do that in the prize. I want to give the opportunity to Antonio Lopez da Silva, to Jaime, to Patrick, if they want to say anything. Please do give me a sign before we close. Let me know if you want to take the floor. Jaime. You seem like you would like to say something. Microphone.
Gracias. Yo solo quisiera sumar a lo dicho por lo que dijo Patricia y lo que dijo Anne Cristel, en el sentido que todas nosotras tenemos que sumarnos a las mujeres para acabar con el patriarcado. El patriarcado es lo que genera todo tipo de violencias, el tipo de control y las desigualdades. Tú hablabas de ¿qué frase podríamos decir? Y lo único que puedo decir es que si no acabamos con la discriminación, con la pobreza y generamos bienestar, hagamos lo que hagamos para construir la paz, será inútil. Entonces, busquemos la paz a partir de la solidaridad, la empatía, el feminismo y acabamos con el patriarcado. Gracias.
Muchísimas gracias, Jaime. Antonio.
Sí.
Ahí está usted, la palabra es suya.
Yo quería solamente decir lo siguiente, un encuentro de este mismo, estando lejos, estamos aprendiendo y mucho. Y también decir que la solución que nosotros estamos construyendo es una solución para todos y todas. No puede haber remedio para COVID solo para unos, pero tiene que ser para todos y todas. Esto es mi sensación, yo creo que eso va a acontecer. Muchas gracias por la invitación.
Muchísimas gracias, alcalde. Un gusto tener siempre esa perspectiva de Praia. Muchas gracias. Patrick, a thought, and then Maria, and then we will give the floor to our colleague to present the forum in Mexico. Patrick?
Just one thing which I would want to emphasize is building the structures at local level and engaging the local communities, because from the current research you have conducted, these are the primary stakeholders. These are very key in intervention we may talk about, but often they are always left out or engaged as others, which should not be the case. They should be engaged as active stakeholders, as active partners in this development. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Patrick. Maria, one sentence that you would like to bring with you and to leave with the group?
I wanted to bring with me that the lockdown and the pandemic didn't exactly cause the problems that surfaced. They just make us take the lead off, and they showed us where our weak places are to give us something to work upon even after everything is over.
Thank you very much, Maria. And I see that, our colleague from Bogota is still with us. Vladimir, you want to say anything, or are you in a difficult position?
No, thank you very much. Excuse me for the image, but you know.
It's our reality.
Yeah, it's our reality. We work in this moment in the street because the mayor office put in marcha un programa de humanity attention, you know, for 500,000 of poverty in Bogotá. Estamos llegando con diferentes temas de ayuda. Solo quería aportar la reflexión que, así como el fenómeno es global y la problemática del COVID es global, pero tiene una particularidad en cada uno de nuestros territorios, barrios, ciudades. La solución también debe ser global, entendiendo las particularidades y las diversidades de cada uno de esos territorios. Teniendo, como hoy planteaba Jaime, lo cual recojo, el horizonte del feminismo, la construcción de espacios que permitan la reducción de la brecha de desigualdad y que las conceptualizaciones en torno a las soluciones sean de todos y de todas desde nuestras ciudades, nuestras capacidades, partiendo de la solidaridad y la humanidad como bandera.
Muchísimas gracias. There is a very strong feeling among the network of the members of United Cities and Local Governments, the community of local and regional governments, that solidarity is taking a new meaning, that it is no longer about those that can giving to those that cannot, but that it's about a new notion of coming together, a new sort of globalization. It's even about efficiency. This new notion of solidarity, and I do hope that we can put people at the center, but also establish this new relation with the planet and with nature that need to help us redefine our cities. I will now give the floor to Antonio Zurita. Antonio was a very important partner for us in organizing the first and the second forum in the city of Madrid, and now works with our partner UNDP Arts. Antonio, ¿quién nos lo iba a decir, este encuentro en otra realidad? Te dejo la palabra para que nos presentes las ideas sobre el foro.
Pues muchas gracias, Emilia. En la vida hay muchas vidas, efectivamente, y lo importante es ese compromiso que mantenemos hasta el final. Para facilitar el trabajo de interpretación he escrito una intervención muy breve apoyada en 3 slides. No me voy a salir del guión y seré concreto para no ocupar tiempo. Me toca presentar de nuevo el Foro Mundial de Ciudades y Territorios de Paz, sobre todo su agenda futura, con el objetivo de animarles a sumarse a este proceso. El foro es un proceso de reflexión mundial, colectiva y horizontal, multiactor y multinivel, con la finalidad de intercambiar experiencias y ofrecer propuestas para la implementación de políticas de construcción de paz en los territorios. Está impulsado por un comité organizador internacional con más de 20 entidades, ciudades, redes internacionales, metrópolis, CGLU, Habitat, PNUD, otras agencias de Naciones Unidas y organizaciones de cultura de paz y otras. A lo largo de todas las intervenciones que se han sucedido ha quedado claro que no es posible el desarrollo sostenible sin paz y no es posible la paz sin desarrollo sostenible. El shock mundial provocado por el COVID provoca una crisis sanitaria, una crisis social, económica, política y también una crisis de valores, de mentalidades. En este momento compiten en las mentes de las personas los mensajes de odio, racismo, individualismo, frente a los valores de solidaridad, servicios públicos, el valor de lo común, en definitiva, la agenda de derechos humanos y de objetivos de desarrollo sostenible. ¿Qué valores ofrecen más seguridad? Esta es la pregunta. En las ciudades, los territorios conviven con todo tipo de violencias que ya se han mencionado, directas. Más de 1,5 millones de personas mueren cada año por la violencia interpersonal, estructurales. El gran crimen de la humanidad es la pobreza, es el hambre, las desigualdades, o culturales, el racismo, el machismo, etc. La guerra, la corrupción, el acoso en las redes son otros ejemplos de violencias con las que convivimos. Sin más, les cuento cómo va el foro. La iniciativa surgió en el 2015, en la COP21 en París, impulsada por las alcaldesas de Madrid, París y Barcelona, como ya mencionó Diana Alarcón, y se celebró su primera edición en Madrid, coincidiendo con el Buró Ejecutivo del CGLU. Tras el éxito de la convocatoria y los resultados, se convocó una segunda edición a finales del 2018. Se reunió el Consejo Mundial también en esta edición y se aprobó el compromiso para una agenda de ciudades de convivencia y paz, un documento que compartiremos a través de CGLU con todos ustedes y que define de forma muy completa posibles hojas de ruta y planes de acción para la construcción de paz a nivel local. La Ciudad de México aceptó el reto de ser anfitriona del tercer Foro Mundial y el Comité Internacional se puso a trabajar con ella. El impacto de la pandemia ha colocado la temática aún con más fuerza y es necesario fortalecer los valores de la convivencia basados en derechos humanos, sociales, económicos y culturales. Lógicamente, el formato y el contenido incorporan este impacto de tal manera que presento la agenda de los próximos meses. En este mes, en junio, como verán en el slide, vamos a lanzar todos los instrumentos de comunicación, el nuevo sitio web, los newsletters, las redes sociales, etc. Entre junio y diciembre, actividades formativas, foros regionales y temáticos, recopilación de experiencias, incidencia en políticas, cartografías, diagnósticos locales, formarán parte de la agenda de trabajo. Para octubre de 2020, como ya mencionó Jaime, se celebrará un evento mundial virtual llamado Rumbo al Foro, donde pensamos que puede haber debates con participación de diferentes partes del mundo relacionadas con la construcción de paz. Y para el abril de 2021 esperamos y cruzamos los dedos que se pueda celebrar el Foro Mundial de manera presencial. En el camino les animamos a ponerse en contacto para poder llevar el contenido del foro a sus territorios, foros locales, foros regionales o temáticos. En cualquier caso, vamos a estar en contacto y sin duda el foro va a ser una gran plataforma de encuentro. Queremos apoyar otro tipo de contagio, contagiar convivencia y contagiar paz. Muchas gracias.
Muchísimas gracias, Antonio. Ahí vamos a hacer todo lo posible para que CGRU propicie ese contagio positivo que estamos deseando todos. I have been told that the mayor of Bangui is here, and I know how difficult it is to make room in such an agenda, so I would invite him to take the floor. Mayor, are you with us? Monsieur le maire, est-ce que vous êtes là? Le maire de Bangui? He's here. No, we don't see him anymore. He's been getting in and out. His communication is difficult. Sorry for that. I want to give the floor now to Diana to wrap up with me and also to Octavi. Colleagues, how do you feel? How has this dialogue left us? I feel empowered, but it usually happens after these sessions. So I don't know, what are you keeping in your heads and what do you want to share? Diana, comienza tú. Ah, there it is, the mayor of Bangui. Diana, ¿le damos un ratito al alcalde?
Por favor.
Monsieur le maire, désolé, je pensais que nous avions perdu la connexion. Allez-y, monsieur. Je vous écoute pas, je vous entends pas. On a un problème de connexion quand même. Hein? Vous n'avez pas de microphone? Allez-y, monsieur. Ah là là, c'est dommage. Désolé, monsieur le maire. Mais vous n'avez pas de micro? Je vous vois, mais on n'entend rien. Désolé. Diana, me parece que vamos a tener que seguir conversando nosotras hasta ver si podemos solucionarle al alcalde. Por favor, adelante.
Bueno, ojalá lo tengamos en un momento. Seguramente es su micrófono que no está conectado. No, muchísimas gracias a todos. Thank you very much to all of you for sharing your experiences from your cities and your thoughts around this important issue of how we build peace. How do I feel right now? I feel like we should stay here and continue this conversation because I think that there is a lot more that we can share. Many colleagues, unfortunately, did not have the opportunity to speak and to share their concerns and their experiences, which leads me to think that this is going to be a long and very rich process of building together not only the new ways to get to peace, to make peace in our cities and territories, but also as a way to deepen our conversations. I think that you are right to say we feel at some points, we felt at some points out of place. We are used to see each other, to meet, to have all these personal conversations, which is a lot of fun because it gives us the opportunity to also build more informal relations. But I think we have right now the greatest opportunity to make sure that this is a global conversation. There is only very few people who can travel to these conferences. Now we can connect with everyone. And if we are saying that peace is built from the localities, from the territories, from the micro level, we need to make sure that we are able to bring those voices and to set up a process where Mayor is here.
Just finish up,
Okay.
Eliana,
And to
we
build
will give the floor to the mayor.
very quickly, and to build this truly global process in which we can build on a, on a constructive way to rebuild our societies from this experience. There are many more things to talk about and to share, but we want to hear from the mayor as well.
Muchas gracias, Diana. Monsieur le maire, je pense qu'on va réussir cette fois-ci. À vous la parole.
Bonjour. Vous m'entendez?
Très bien.
Bonjour, ma soeur. Bonjour, comment vous allez?
Ça va bien, c'est à vous la parole. 3 minutes, monsieur le maire.
Ah, merci beaucoup. Je vous remercie et vous remercie surtout pour tout ce que vous avez fait pour me porter dans vos prières, le soutien que vous m'avez apporté lors de ma convalescence parce que j'ai été atteint de Covid. Maintenant, je vais bien, très bien, je m'en suis sorti. Pour une autre thématique, je voulais simplement dire que ici, il y a plusieurs problèmes qui se posent, surtout dans des pays comme les nôtres, qui vivent de le budget essentiellement en Centrafrique. Le gouvernement est fiscalo-douanier. Donc, quand il n'y a pas d'importation, quand le commerce ne marche pas, l'État ne gagne pas d'argent. Et nous n'exportons pratiquement rien, à part le bois, le diamant. Mais aujourd'hui, les activités sont au ralenti. Donc, la paix, si le gouvernement n'a pas assez de moyens, si les populations n'ont pas suffisamment de ressources, vous voyez que la paix est menacée. La paix est souvent menacée du fait que l'homme se recherche. L'homme veut manger. L'homme veut se soigner, l'homme veut s'habiller, l'homme veut s'instruire, l'homme veut vivre mieux. Mais si l'homme n'a pas tous ses moyens, toutes ses ressources pour se soutenir moralement, économiquement, cette maladie, cette pandémie va porter un coup fatal à la paix que nous avons retrouvée petit à petit. Et nous nous inquiétons fortement du fait que le confinement fait plus de mal que d'heureux, plus de malheureux que d'heureux. Et d'où la nécessité d'avoir des appuis, la solidarité internationale. La communauté internationale devait appuyer les pays comme les nôtres qui nous recherchons. D'ailleurs, nous voulons remercier le Maroc et d'autres pays qui nous soutiennent. Mais la paix sera d'une manière imparable menacée parce que les gens ne vaquent pas à leurs préoccupations de tous les jours. Beaucoup de gens sont confinés et des fois, quand ils sont confinés, ils ont même des difficultés pour manger. Parce qu'ici, les gens vivent au quotidien. Quand ils ne sortent pas pour vendre quelque chose, quand ils ne sortent pas pour faire du commerce, ils ne peuvent pas manger. Le repas, c'est au quotidien parce que la personne travaille et est payée à la tâche. La majorité des Centrafricains vivent au quotidien, du commerce, des ventes à la sauvette. Et la COVID nous menace terriblement dans la recherche de cette paix que nous sommes en train d'acquérir avec tous les problèmes que nous avons connus. Donc ici, le problème se pose avec beaucoup d'acuité, avec beaucoup d'importance du fait tout simplement que nous sommes un pays dont le budget, dont les moyens dépendent de l'importation. Donc, le budget est fiscalo-douanier. Le problème se pose à ce niveau-là. C'est pour cela qu'on veut bien que des amis, la société internationale nous appuient, du fait déjà que nous ne pouvons pas nous soigner sans l'apport de l'extérieur, les bailleurs de fonds, la communauté internationale. Mais ce qui est plus grave encore chez nous, c'est que la paix va être très menacée du fait de l'inconscience de nos compatriotes, de l'incivisme, parce qu'ils n'y croient pas. Beaucoup ne croient pas. En Afrique, beaucoup ne croient pas à ce virus-là. Ils disent que c'est quelque chose qui a été inventé pour avoir de l'argent. La vraie menace est ici. La vraie menace, c'est vraiment cet incivisme, cette inconscience. Le virus en tant que tel, la COVID en tant que tel n'est pas un problème. Mais le problème qui se pose à nous et qui se pose aussi à la paix, c'est que la cohésion sociale, le vivre ensemble, c'est cette inconscience de nos compatriotes. Et puis nous évitons aussi que la paix ne soit pas entamée par la stigmatisation, qu'une certaine partie de la population soit indexés du fait qu'ils ont eu parmi eux des premiers malades. Donc nous gérons tout ça pour que la cohésion, l'entraide et la solidarité nationale soient notre socle pour que cette paix-là soit préservée. Mais la paix, sans aucun moyen pour l'entretenir, sans aucun moyen pour se soigner, pour se nourrir, pour s'abriter et pour s'habiller, la paix est un vain mot.
Merci, merci Monsieur le maire pour ce témoin très cru, très réel, et très important. On va faire notre mieux pour améliorer la situation en général et pour vous aider aussi parce que vous faites partie de la famille de ces élus. Merci pour votre intervention importante. Well, colleagues, I think you agree with me that we couldn't miss these inputs, these very real inputs. With our feet on the ground, tasting the reality. There is a lot that we need to do on information. There is a lot that we need to do on solidarity and keeping, enhancing the capacities of leaders such as the mayor. Octavi, ¿cómo se nos queda el cuerpo? ¿Qué me dices? ¿Algunas palabras de reflexión?
Sí, no, brevemente, yo creo que después de ir al alcalde, que he pasado de lo que has dicho tú, ¿no? En la realidad, en el conocimiento real, yo creo que hay, a veces cuando hablamos de paz, podemos quedar en un debate muy conceptual, muy wishful thinking, y yo creo que hoy hemos empezado a aterrizarlo. Como ya en los anteriores dos foros lo habíamos aterrizado, pero yo creo que hoy hemos tenido un debate sobre lo concreto, ¿no? Y si los otros life learning experiences que tuvimos era sobre políticas muy concretas, hoy hemos hablado, yo creo, del alma de la ciudad, ¿no? Del espíritu de la ciudad, pero que también tiene un impacto en la realidad de la vida de las personas. Y hay tres elementos interesantes que han salido hoy, ¿no? Uno, que liga con lo que decía el alcalde ahora mismo, que es cómo lo vinculamos, ¿no? El trabajo de paz, no solamente con un trabajo aislado, sino con todas las políticas públicas locales que se desarrollan, ¿no? Cómo vinculas paz con movilidad, cómo vinculas paz con acceso a servicios sociales básicos, lo que decía él, cómo vinculas paz con desarrollo económico, con oportunidades para la gente para que pueda desarrollar su vida. Ese es un elemento, ¿no? Cómo hacemos que las demás políticas públicas se empapen de la cuestión de la cultura de la paz. El segundo es el elemento, yo creía, que ha sido también mucho del impacto que el diseño de la ciudad tiene en la construcción de una cultura de la paz y que, por tanto, crear una cultura de la paz no solamente, obviamente hay una parte de sensibilización ciudadana, de discurso, pero también en concreto de cómo estamos diseñando esa ciudad, ¿no? El espacio público, la accesibilidad, las viviendas, etc. Y el tercer elemento que yo también tenía recogido y que Diana ha apuntado es, yo creo, Emilia, si me permites, que las conclusiones de este briefing tienen que incorporarse en todo el trabajo que estamos haciendo con la Global Task Force para el UN 75. Yo creo que hay elementos de hoy que han de formar parte esencial de ese documento que estamos trabajando todas las redes conjuntamente. O sea que no, muchas gracias a todos los participantes por el debate de hoy.
Muchas gracias, Octavi. Yo creo que el debate de hoy además enlaza muy bien with this other big debate that we are having next week on local democracy and what it implies, local democracy now. So I hope I hope to really see you all next week, because you are absolutely right. Our realities are not sectorialized. We are all many people in one single person. We are the friend, the professional, the sister, the daughter. But we go through life with all of that included, and I think that is what we have shown today. How multidimensional this discussion is, how significant it is, and I feel great hope in the fact that our political leadership has such a clarity about the links between the different things that they are doing. And I think it should be our role as networks to facilitate the promotion of policies that make these links possible. Multilateralism, a new type of multilateralism, a new generation of multilateralism is just as important as generation equality. Our movement is built on those principles, and we need global approaches, global solutions that are thought from a local perspective. I'm so grateful for all of you being here with us, still hundreds of us meeting now. Thank you very much, and see you next Thursday. Thank you. Thank you, all of you. Bye-bye. Keep healthy, calm, and creative. Ciao. Au revoir.
Gracias a todos.
Cuídense mucho. Take good care of yourselves.
Adiós, Mariana.
Au revoir à tous.
Nos vemos en el foro.
Hacia el foro.
Bye
Nos vemos pronto.
Au revoir.
Au revoir, Najat. Merci.
Najat, merci. Bye, bye.
Felicitaciones, equipo.
Cerramos.